Hello, hello. Hey, welcome everybody. I hope I'm working. I think I'm working. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you are having a really good weekend. I've been having a pretty good weekend, so I hope it's going okay for you too. For those of you who don't know, my name is Axel. I'm the person behind Get Speaking English. And today I am going to be checking out the next article in my series. So if you're not aware, I've been doing a lot of lessons, a lot of conversational lessons based on either articles or videos. I have been putting them out pretty consistently since the summer, I think. Anyways, I just started I've during before Christmas I was developing the next series of articles. So for the next couple of weeks I'm going to be checking out the next few articles in the series. So this is the first one we are going to check out. This one is about distractions. So, and all of these articles are loosely related to the topic of entertainment. I'm talking about entertainment right now on social media. So, but I have to make it interesting. So, so we're going to talk about distractions today. I mean, there's a lot of entertaining, things that you might do that would distract you, right? And usually distractions are sort of have a negative connotation, right? Like typically you don't want to be distracted. It's a really bad thing. But this article is kind of interesting because it talks about some of the benefits of getting distracted, actually. So so that will be kind of interesting. Yeah. So what I'm going to do basically is read this article. I'm going to go through it. You're going to be able to hear the pronunciation, the phrasing, things like that. And I'm going to take some time along the way to discuss maybe some of the vocabulary, some of the phrases, some of the collocations and things like that that I think will be good for you to know at like a C1 at an advanced level. So you can have all that information, and hopefully that will help you understand this article a little bit better. You'll be able to review this video as well afterwards. It'll be on YouTube. I'm also going to put the notes up there as well. I'm not sure how many notes I'm going to have today, but we're going to have some notes. I will link it in the description on YouTube, so you'll be able to have that as a reference, so you can always go back to this video, rewatch it. Again, hear the pronunciation. You can shadow as well. You can practice saying what I say to get a sense of, the rhythm of English, where the accents go, where the stress goes, how the words kind of blend together, things like that. All of those details are really important to get right, especially if you want to speak English at a really advanced level. So near C2 level, we really want to be paying attention to those sort of details. Anyways, so you can review it for all of that different things, or even just the vocabulary. And you can use some of the vocabulary in this article for practicing speaking. If you're doing the daily speaking prompts that I share, you can kind of try to incorporate some of the vocabulary into those answers. Anyways, so enough rambling. I'm gonna get into it. So I'm on live on Facebook right now. I'm on YouTube right now. So feel free to say hello. Let me know that you are alive if you would like. Just a heads up, this article reading is not going to be hugely interactive. What I will do next week, though, is I will have sort of a live lesson that's based on one of the parts of the C1 Advanced and the B2 First exam. So that will be a lot more interactive. But here I'm going to be focusing mostly on the article, just reading, discussing vocabulary. I'll try to think of a couple questions here and there. If I think people will answer them, I will ask questions, because I do love when we interact a little bit. I love when people ask questions, or when they answer questions and things like that. So So if you're around, I will definitely ask questions, but I'm mostly gonna be reading. All right, so I think I'm ready. I should double check make sure that everything is fine. When you stream, you have a lot of windows open. It requires there's so much going on the screen. Okay, so I think I'm good. I got my like trusty little pen here. I got my screen for vocabulary, anything like that, pronunciations. All right, and let's give it a go. All right. So, there we go. All right. So why getting distracted can be a very good thing. All right. So, Alexander Graham Bell was not a fan of multitasking. The inventor believed that true creativity came from a single-minded concentration on the issue under consideration. And any distraction would only take you further from your goal. All right. So, so just so we're all on the same page, so multitasking. You know, that's that idea where you're working on maybe multiple projects or multiple tasks at the same time, and you're generally switching between all of these tasks, right? But this inventor believed that, you know, if you really wanted to be truly creative, you had to focus just on one task at the time. You had to focus all of your attention onto that. And any distraction, anything going on, will break that creativity. It will prevent you from being able to reach your goal. So that's what they mean by creativity came from single-minded concentration. This isn't really a common phrase in English, but single-minded concentration, just kind of a fancy way to say concentrating on one task, basically. All right. So, concentrate all your thoughts upon the work at hand, he once told the author Orison Swett Marden. For the 12th century, for the early 12th century inspirational book, How They Succeeded. The sun's rays do not burn until brought into focus. Yeah, so concentrate all of your thoughts at the work at hand. If something is at hand, we mean the thing that you are currently doing. He once told this author for the 20th century inspirational book, How They Succeeded. Yeah, so the sun's rays, so the light from the sun do not burn until they are brought into focus. If you bring something into focus, say if you were looking at a camera, for example, if you're looking through a camera, looking through through it, trying to take a picture, usually it's blurry at first, and then you have to focus it. You have to make the image sharp, right? So if you bring something into focus, it means you sharpen it, basically, so you can see it clearly. So, anyways, yeah, all right. And until recently, psychological research seemed to agree, showing that we are more efficient and in jobs that require precision, more accurate, when we keep our minds firmly on track. Yeah, so until recently, so up until now, there seemed to be research that would agree with this idea that we needed to focus on one thing at a time in order to be truly creative. So showing that we are more efficient, as in we get things done more easily, more quickly, when we keep our minds firmly on track. So especially in jobs that require precision. So precision, we can see the word precise in here. Here we go. So if something is precise, we mean exact, right? So a job that requires precision, you need to be very precise, or you need to be careful, get the get the task as correct as possible. So that's definitely better when we keep our minds firmly on track and firm here. Or yeah, just we're there, we're not changing our focus, nothing like that. And kind of a great little collocation here, actually, to keep something on track. So to keep something on track, kind of a great little collocation, common phrase here. That just basically means that we are staying on task. We are not deviating from that. We're not getting distracted. We're not going off track, basically. That would be the opposite. So basically, to keep something on track, move forward with something as planned without interruption, basically, or interrupting or distraction. Whereas if something goes off track, it means that you basically lose the focus. You get kind of distracted, basically. All right. Let's get back here. But a couple of eye-catching news studies now call these assumptions into question, at least when it comes to the kinds of creative tasks that were so close to Belle's heart. When you are trying to come up with new ideas, a laser-sharp focus may backfire, and a distraction could actually boost your chances of finding a truly novel solution to your problem. Alright, so that's kind of interesting. So a couple eye-catching news studies. So something eye-catching is just something that basically attracts people's attention. Usually we use eye-catching to refer to something that maybe looks really beautiful, like something that catches your eye visually, right? Because it looks really pretty or something like that, or looks really beautiful. It's highly attractive. But here we're using it to refer to we could use it also to refer to things that are just kind of interesting and curious, right? So there have been a few eye-catching news studies that now call these assumptions. So basically just these ideas that we have accepted to be true, and they call it into question. So if we call something into question, we're just basically questioning it, basically. But that's another great little phrase as well, too. So if we're basically questioning the validity of something, like how true something is, maybe how true a statement is, or how true an assumption is, we would call it into question. So that's kind of a great phrase that we would use for that. So to call something into question, to question the validity or the truth of a statement or question or assumption here in this case. Yeah, so at least when it comes to the kinds of creative tasks that were so close to Belle's heart. So if something is close to your heart, another great little phrase here. Something close to your heart is just something that's very important to you. So something close to your heart is very important to you. We might say it's very near and dear to you. Another kind of little bit of a collocation here. Something very near and dear to you. Another way to say that it's very important, so it's close to your heart. So something that you truly care about. So He really loved creativity. That was important for him. So it was very close to his heart. So when you're trying to come up with new ideas, laser sharp focus, so exact, precise focus, may backfire. So backfire is kind of an interesting word. Great little word. If something backfires, it basically has the opposite effect than the one you intended. So if something backfires, it has maybe the opposite results of the one you intend. So maybe you set out to do something, you go through the process thinking that it's going to have one result, and then it ends up doing the opposite. So yeah, so what they're saying is, yeah, when you come up with new ideas, you're trying to think creatively, focusing on one thing may actually prevent you from doing that task. So that's kind of interesting. But a distraction could actually boost your chances, so raise your chances of finding a truly novel solution to your problem. So novel here, that's just kind of a fancy, kind of a formal way to basically say new. So something novel is something new. So that's kind of a great word to use as well. Yeah. All right. So these benefits hinge on the fact that our minds often become stuck in a rut, meaning that we spend too much time concentrating on the first ideas we thought of, rather than generating truly novel solutions. This phenomenon, known as cognitive fixation, and many psychologists now consider it to be the principal barrier to true creativity. Right. So these benefits hinge on, or these benefits depend on, so just another way to say depend on, these benefits hinge on the fact that our minds often become stuck in a rut. So stuck in a rut, great little idiom here. So if you are stuck in a rut, it means that you are basically bored, kind of tired of doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah, so to be stuck in a rut, basically be bored because you've been doing the same thing over and over again. Or maybe you just feel tired, or you feel uninspired. Be bored, tired, uninspired, because you've been doing the same thing over and over again, right? So some people find that, you know, they may feel that they are stuck in a rut because they are tired of doing the typical daily grind, right? You know, you get up, you get ready for work, you eat the same thing, you take the same route to work, you do the same job, you come back, and then you rinse and repeat every single day. So you might feel stuck in a rut that way. So these benefits hinge on the fact that our minds often become stuck in a rut, so it gets kind of tired and kind of bored, meaning that we spend too much time concentrating on the first ideas we thought of, rather than generating truly novel ideas. So we end up just thinking about the first thing over and over again, instead of creating truly new ideas, because we're spending so much time thinking of the first thing we thought of. So this phenomenon, known as cognitive fixation, this phenomenon is known as cognitive fixation. And this isn't really a common thing that people would know of, right? This is their technical term. But it is common to say, though, in English, that you are fixated on something. To be fixated on something means that you are kind of obsessed, that you are thinking, you only about that one thing. So to be fixated on something, you are basically obsessed or only thinking about that one thing. You're having a hard time maybe thinking about other things, doing about other things, because you are just fixated on one thing. You know, if you were the type of person that maybe gets lost in your work, you can really you really get into a project and you have a hard time pulling yourself away from that. Maybe you lose track of time. You might say that you get fixated on your projects. So but yeah, this whole thing though, known as cognitive fixation, and many psychologists now consider it to be the principal barrier, so the principal obstacle to true creativity. So to find out whether multitasking could help us to break out of that rut, Jackson Liu and a team at Columbia Business School used a common laboratory test of creativity. Participants had to think of as many uses as possible of a common object, like a kitchen bowl, within a fixed amount of time. One valid answer might be that you wear the bowl as a hat to protect your hair from the rain, for instance. So to find out whether multitasking could help us break out of that rut, so here's the kind of the opposite. We talked about being stuck in a rut. So to be bored, here's basically the phrase that means that you get out of that rut then. So to break out of a rut, or to get out of a rut, we might say as well. But yeah, to break out of a rut basically means to do something that will help help you get out of that rut, help you feel a little bit maybe more lively, a little bit more excited again, and feel better basically. So break that pattern, right? We also say to break a pattern, right? Or to break a habit, right? So to break out of a rut. So they use a common laboratory test of creativity. Participants had to think of as many uses as possible of a common object within a fixed amount of time. So another great little phrase here, a fixed amount of time. Just kind of a fancy way to say a set amount of time, or a limited amount of time, right? So they only had they had to do the task in a very within a time frame, a very specific time frame, right? So we would say a fixed amount of time there. So one valid answer or one acceptable answer might be that you wear a bowler hat to protect your hair from the rain, for instance. It's because I know somebody asked me one time, so for instance is just another way to say for example. So especially if you're essay writing, things like that, it's good to have some vocabulary so you're not as repetitive. So we could use the word for instance in place of for example, and it's a great alternative to that phrase. All right. So the participants had to complete the task twice, finding alternative uses for a brick and a toothpick. The only difference was that some were asked to do so in blocks, listing all the uses for the brick first before turning their full attention to the toothpick, while others were told to alternate between the two tasks. All right, so they had to do the task twice. They had to do it 2 times, finding alternative uses, so different uses for the brick and toothpick. The only difference was some were asked to do so in blocks. So here in blocks, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term time blocking, but it basically refers where you set a very specific amount of time, a fixed amount of time, to working on one task or maybe a series of tasks at a time. So that's kind of a very effective means of maybe scheduling your time. If you have a lot of things that you're doing, you would dedicate blocks of time to various tasks, right? So that's what we mean here. So some were asked to do the task in blocks, so they had a very specific amount of time to do one of the tasks before they had to switch to the other task. So that's what they mean here. So to do something in a block means to do it within a specific time frame before moving on to the next task, basically. So yeah, so we do something in tasks, we just do it for a little bit, move on. Yeah, so listing all the uses for the first brick before turning their full attention. So another kind of common connotation here, to turn your attention to something. So if you turn your attention to something, maybe you are thinking about one thing, and now we're going to think about something else. We're going to do something else. So that is a very great, very common phrase. So to basically stop thinking about one thing, think about something else. Or doing, like stop thinking or doing one thing to do something else. Yeah, so they'll do this one thing for a block of time before thinking about the other thing. While others were told to alternate between the two tasks. So if you alternate between something, we're just switching between something. So to alternate between some things means to switch between things. So maybe you're working on it and you're just kind of like going back and forth. Exactly like multitasking. Basically, you would alternate maybe between different tasks, attempting to get everything done. All right. So according to Bell's view that immersed concentration is the key to creativity, you might expect the first group to perform better. But this wasn't what the team found. While they might have felt that they were on a roll, the reality was that without the breaks afforded by the continual task switching, their actual progress was limited. All right. Yeah, so according to the first hypothesis, right, that it's best to think about one thing, you might think that the first group, the one that did it in blocks of time, would perform better. But that's not what they discovered. So yeah, so while they might have felt that they were on a roll, the reality was that it was different. So if you're on a roll about something, this is another great little idiom. So if you're on a roll, you're basically experiencing a period. It means that you're experiencing a period of having a lot of successes, maybe, be on a roll, have a period of successes. So like usually like one after another too. Like maybe you're thinking like, oh, we have all of these great ideas, one right after another. Really great. We also often use this phrase, to be on a roll, when talking about luck. So for example, if you're playing some sort of gambling game or something like that, where you have to bet and win money, and you start winning, you would say that you are on a roll. So yeah, so we also use this phrase to refer to periods when we are having a lot of luck. So if we are experiencing a lot of wins, while we're doing something. So yeah, so if you're on a roll, you're having lots of success, lots of good luck. So yeah, so while the first group felt that they were on a roll, they were having a lot of success, the reality was that without breaks afforded by the continual task switching, their actual progress was limited. So they felt that they were on, while they thought they were on a roll, they thought they were doing good. The reality was that they didn't have enough breaks, and that prevented them from being as creative as they could have been. So from the sheer number of ideas they produced to the perceived novelty of the ideas, as assessed by independent judges, the multitaskers performed better. So here, this from the sheer number of ideas, we mean a really great number here, a really huge number. This word here, sheer, it's kind of a word that just really emphasizes a great, number, or maybe it emphasizes how maybe great or important or I don't know, powerful something is. So a couple sort of examples here. Here we're using it to indicate numbers, right? But here's kind of an example. So the suggestion was sheer nonsense. So we know nonsense, something that doesn't make sense, right? So so we can tell that it was hugely unrealistic. It did not make sense whatsoever. Another word we might say, maybe it was like, it's, utter nonsense. So sort of another synonym for that word, but yeah, like a huge, like, it was just like a great quantity of nonsense, basically. Or here is another example too. So it was sheer coincidence that we met. So a coincidence is kind of something that happens randomly, unplanned. So it was a huge coincidence. It was really unplanned. We never thought it would have happened in a million years. Hugely unlikely, and then it happens. So yeah, so anything sheer, usually really big somehow, or really great. So from the sheer number of ideas they produced to the perceived novelty of the ideas. So now we see sort of another sort of form of the word novel. So novelty, something novel with a lot of novelty, has a sense of newness, basically. So, for example, some personalities may crave novelty. So some people crave novelty. They crave new experiences. They really want new experiences. They want to try new and interesting things. So that's what novelty means. Basically, this idea of newness. Yeah, so the multitaskers performed better. So they ended up having way more ideas. And the ideas that they came up with were a lot more interesting, a lot more new, a lot more clever, maybe. Yeah. All right. So for further evidence, the team looked at a test of convergent thinking, in which you are given 3 words, such as way, mission, and let, and you have to think of a common linking word, in this case, sub. The test is meant to measure your ability to find the associations between apparently unconnected concepts. And unlike the alternative uses task, you are looking for a single answer that comes from a single flash of insight. All right. So for further evidence, so for more proof, so evidence, just another way to say proof, the team looked at a test of convergent thinking. So convergent here, we can see the word converge in here. When things converge, they meet, they overlap basically. So to converge basically means to overlap or to meet basically. So yeah, so they're trying to do a thing basically, figuring out how words are connected or how they overlap basically. Like, what do they have in common? So in this task, they were given 3 words, right, such as way, mission, and let. And you have to think of a common linking word. So a linking word, something that brings them together in this case. So, yeah, so the test is meant to measure your ability to find the associations or to find the links, the things have in common with one another between apparently unconnected concepts or ideas. And unlike the alternative uses tasks, you are looking for a single answer that comes from a single flash of insight. So if you have insight into something, just basically means that you kind of have like a you kind of have a like clarity about something, like you really understand something. So to have insight basically means to have, you know, a clear and deep understanding of something. Yeah, so basically what will happen, a single flash, like you will just get like a sudden moment where you're like, oh, that is the answer. So that's kind of what they mean here. So yeah. So once again, some participants were asked to consider 2 problems simultaneously, so at the same time, by switching their attention between the 2, while others were told to look at them in sequence. And the results were even more striking than the team's first experiment, with 51% of the multitaskers solving both problems, compared to just 14% who looked at them sequentially, more than a 3-fold difference. So yeah, so once again, so like before, some participants were asked to consider the 2 problems, right, simultaneously, so to do them together by switching their attention between the 2 tasks, while others were told to look at them in sequence, so one after another. So again, sort of blocking our time, right? So doing it in blocks. So look at this question for 1 block of time before moving on to this question for another block of time, this one for another block of time. So one after another in sequence. And the results were even more striking, so even more notable or more interesting than, or surprising, I should say, even more surprising or interesting than the team's first experiment, with 51% of the multitaskers, so the people doing the multitasking, the multitaskers, solving both problems, compared to just 14% who were looking at them sequentially. Just another way to say in sequence. So more than a 3-fold difference. So more, the difference is 3 times bigger. Yeah, so that is kind of interesting. So perhaps the biggest benefits can be found in group brainstorms. Something we've probably all been tasked with during meetings at work, which often involve a lot of talk without much innovation. Yeah, so perhaps the biggest benefit can be found in group Brainstorms. So I have to be honest with you, I typically would not use the word brainstorm as a noun like this, but apparently that is acceptable. I would call them brainstorming sessions. But yeah, I guess we can use brainstorms as a noun. And I think we've all done that, right? When we all have to get together and sort of generate ideas with other people. Yeah, so something we've all been tasked with. So sort of a way to say you've been assigned with something. If you were tasked with to be tasked with a project, basically to be assigned a project. Yeah, so we've all been tasked with during meetings at work, which often involve a lot of talk without much innovation. So innovation, the idea of creating new, novel, interesting, unique ideas. So usually brainstorming gets people talking, but they don't really come up with anything new or interesting, is basically what they're saying. So the problem is that besides facing the cognitive fixation of each individual member, the group as a whole becomes distracted by one person's idea rather than considering the ideas of the other team members. The result is that teams working together often produce fewer ideas than if the individuals were working independently. There are a lot of findings showing that working as a group is not very efficient. Says, so at the Education University of Hong Kong. And even a tiny improvement would have a big impact. Yeah. So the problem is, right, so in addition to facing the cognitive fixation, so everybody focusing on one thing of each individual member, the group as a whole, so the entire group becomes distracted by one person's idea instead of considering everybody else's ideas. So they really get fixated. So we're coming back to that word. They get fixated on one person's idea. And then instead of considering everybody else's ideas as well. So the result is that the teams working together often produce fewer ideas. So they won't produce as many ideas than if the individuals were working independently. So independently on their own, basically, or by themselves, right? So there are a lot of findings. So basically a lot of research. There are findings. So basically there's research showing that working as a group is not very efficient. So it is not an effective, good use of time, basically. It doesn't work very well, says this person. So even a tiny improvement, even a little improvement would have a big impact. All right. I want to stop here just for 1 second because I know I have a couple people watching. I'm just curious. So do you find this to be true? Do you agree that group brainstorming is not very effective, or do you like it? Do you think it's a good way to come up with ideas, creative solutions for a project? So let me know what you think. I'm curious to know if you what your experiences have been like. So feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about group brainstorming sections, and whether you think that they've been a good way to come up with ideas or not. All right, so working with colleagues at Carnegie Mellon University, CEO has shown that forcing groups of students to multitask by switching between two problems can break those dynamics, leading to more creative solutions to questions about the ways to improve the campus, including potential strategies to increase the students' physical activity or measures to increase access for disabled people. Crucially, the benefits seem to grow over time, so the longer the students brainstormed, the more advantageous it was to switch between tasks. Yeah, okay, so working with colleagues, so other members of the department, other workers there, he's shown that forcing, so making groups of students multitask by switching between two problems can break those dynamics. So we're talking about dynamics here, specifically the dynamics between a group of people or people. We're kind of referring to like the sort of like the key characteristics of that group. Basically, it's kind of a bit tricky to say, but you know how like certain people get together and then they kind of fall into sort of like a pattern of interaction. So we could think about that as like a dynamic, right? So they can bring in multitasking to sort of shake it up a bit, to change it a bit. So basically people maybe start acting a little bit more independently, and it will change the feeling of the group, basically. So it can break those dynamics, break those patterns, basically, leading to more creative solutions to questions about the ways to improve the campus. So the campus here, if we're talking about a university, the campus is basically the perimeter of the university, like all of the buildings, all of the space, maybe like the outdoor space as well. Basically the entire area that is consumed, that is used by the university would be called the campus. Yeah, so including potential strategies to increase physical activity or measures to increase access for disabled people. So in this case, just disabled people being able to use the facilities, maybe, and get in and out of buildings, things like that. So crucially, the benefits seem to grow over time. So the longer the students brainstorm, the more advantageous it was to switch between tasks. So advantageous. I know we all know the word advantage, right? Advantage. This is kind of another really great word to say that something would have an advantage. So if something is advantageous, there is a big benefit to doing that. It would be an advantage to do that. So, and notice the shift here in the stress. So advantage, right, becomes advantageous. So it's advantageous to do something. So that's kind of would be a great one. It would be advantageous to do X, Y, Z. It would be a good idea to do X, Y, Z, basically. So that's basically what it means, is something is advantageous. Yeah, so it's a good idea to switch between tasks. So when you work as a group and keep listening to those typical ideas, that increases fixation, Sue says. But switching from one task to another can help you forget those typical ideas, meaning that when you return to the problem, you are more likely to think of something new. So yeah, so when you work as a group and keep listening to the typical ideas, so to the normal ideas, that worsens the fixation. We become more fixated on those ideas, and it makes it harder to think of other things. But switching, so changing from one task to another, can help you forget the normal ideas. So when you come back to the problem, you're more likely to think of something new. So it's more probable that you will think of something new. So it doesn't take too much imagination to think how you might put these findings to immediate use. If you are struggling to think of a creative title for your next project, or the name of a new product, for instance, you might have been tempted to devote a fixed amount of time to mulling it over. But this research would suggest that you'd do better to keep a notepad next to your computer, or every so often jot down a new solution while you are working on another task. All right. So it doesn't take too much imagination, so it's pretty easy to think of ways that we might put these findings, these results, to immediate use. So to that we could use them right now. So if you are struggling, so if you are having a problem to think of a new creative title for your project or name of a new product, you might have been tempted, so you might have thought it was a good idea to devote a fixed amount of time to mulling it over. So if you devote time to something, basically another way to say to dedicate time. So to devote time to something, the collocation, to dedicate time to something. Basically saying that you take it and you will use that time to one specific thing. You can devote other resources, money, different things as well too. Just basically another way to say dedicate. Yeah, so you might be tempted to devote a fixed amount of time to mulling it over. So mulling it over is kind of great here. To mull something over. Just another way to say to think about something, to think something over. So, you know, you're thinking about it hard, you're kind of in your mind, right? And you have to kind of maybe think a lot about it. That's what it means to mull something over. So this is a great word as well, and one that you can definitely use in your when you're speaking English, right? It's like, oh, I need some time to mull this over. I need some time to think this over. That's kind of a great alternative way to refer to when you have to think long and hard about something. Yeah. My research would suggest that you do better to keep a notebook next to your computer and every so often jot down a new solution. So another great phrase here, to jot something down. Very informal way to say to write down, to write something down really quickly. So basically to make a really short note. Yeah, so just, you know, maybe you pick up the phone and somebody wants to leave a message. You could be like, oh, just give me a minute. Let me jot down your number so I can call you back or something. So really informal way to say that you just gotta write down their information really quickly. You would jot it down. So it would be better to keep a notepad near your computer, near your workstation, and occasionally jot down, write down ideas as they come while you are working on other tasks. Or suppose you are a wannabe novelist brainstorming new ideas. According to these findings, you would be better to pick your 2 favorites and develop them simultaneously rather than immersing yourself in a single story. Oh yeah, so suppose you are a wannabe novelist, somebody who is a wannabe anything, basically is currently an amateur, so they are not a professional, but they are an amateur, but they have dreams of becoming something. They have dreams to become like successful or do that as a profession. So in this case, a novelist, a person who writes novels. This is a person who has hopes and dreams of maybe publishing their novel and becoming a professional. So suppose you are thinking about your next novel, you want to brainstorm some new ideas. So it would be better for you to pick your 2 favorite ideas and then work on them at the same time, work on them simultaneously, rather than immersing yourself into a single story. So if you immerse yourself in something, we talk a lot about language immersion, right? Where you put yourself into a situation, into a context where you are surrounded by people who speak the language, so you're hearing it all the time, you're reading it all the time, you are surrounded by it. So we can also immerse ourselves in projects as well too. Just basically, putting yourself into something so you are super consumed by that one project and nothing else. So you're consumed by that project and working on nothing else. So it's better to switch between 2 different projects instead of focusing all of your attention on one single story at a time. So at its simplest, this research might just be another excuse to take a break. When you're working on tasks that would benefit from creative thinking, consciously insert breaks to refresh your approach, Lou advises. Yeah, so at its simplest, at its most basic, this research might just be an excuse to take a break. So another reason to take a break. So when you're working on tasks, that would benefit from creative thinking, consciously, so intentionally inserting breaks, or consciously, intentionally insert breaks, so put breaks into your process to refresh your approach, to basically give you new, maybe new energy or new strength, just so you can maybe think of something new, right? So you can feel refreshed, have that new energy. So interestingly, Lou has found that when questioned about the ways they would fuel their own creativity, most people take Bell's view that concentration is key. They would naturally try to increase their focus if they had an important creative task. This is a mistake. They had an important creative task. But given how much we already multitask, it shouldn't be too much effort to allow our minds off the leash as we ponder more complex problems. Right, yeah. So interestingly, Lewis found that when questioned about ways they would fuel their own creativity, but about ways that they would basically inspire or encourage creativity, the majority of people take Bell's view. So at the beginning of the article, so they believe that you have to dedicate all of your time to one task, right? So most people believe that that is the best approach. They would naturally try to increase their focus if they had an important creative task. But given how much we already multitask, it shouldn't be too much effort to allow our minds off the leash. So a leash here, this is actually literally like a thing that you would attach to the collar of an animal, usually like a dog. And it prevents the dog from being able to run away, right? But if we take something off the leash here, we let it run free. To take something off leash, you let it run free. So I'm gonna say that this isn't a super common, super useful word or phrase for you to use. But yeah, if you let your minds off leash, you let your minds wander, basically. That would be beneficial as we ponder or as we think about more complex problems. Yeah, ponder is great. To ponder something. Just again, another way to say to think about something. Yeah, so another really great, interesting, useful word for us to know. All right, so there we have it. So I would be interesting to know if you agree with this. Have you had these same experiences, or do you also think that it's better just to focus on all of your concentration on one sort of idea at a time? So let me know what you think. I would be interested to know. I definitely, because I tend to have to work on a lot of sort of creative projects, I actually have found that it's definitely makes more sense to be able to bounce between a number of different projects at the same time. So that has been my experience. I have definitely found that I am much more productive if I have a couple things that I can switch between. So the moment that I can no longer think about what to do on one project, I have something else lined up that I can jump over to, work on that for a bit, and then yeah, maybe I will come up with ideas and stuff along the way. But I would be interested to know what your experiences are. If you agree with this, maybe you don't find that is as effective. But yeah, let me know. Anyways, as I said earlier, this is the article that I'm checking out right now in my conversation class series. So if you would like to get speaking English about this topic with me about distractions, you can either go to my website, www.getspeakingenglish.com, or you can also go directly to my scheduling page, getspeakingenglish.as.me. And if you book a conversation class between now and, what is it, January 20th, we could talk about this. There's also a code for this. I think it's distract one. I didn't write it down. But yeah, you can, I have it. Let's see here. This is my code. This is the code. Aha! There's a little code on the booking page. This is the code. C1 distract. If you want to talk about this with me, that gives me an idea about what article you want to talk about. So I have all the material ready when you show up to talk to me. So if you'd like to do that, yeah, book between now and January 22nd. To get speaking English about this topic, so you can do that. I'm also having a sale on conversation classes as well, so because I tend to produce these in batches, so that means I prepare several at the exact same time. And because my last cycle ended, I thought it would be great to have a sale. So you can also book packages of conversation classes. Again, those are available through the scheduling page. There's, if on the top left-hand corner, it says packages. You can go there. And if you book packages between now and January 26th, or sorry, January 20th. They are all 25% off. So, and there's a whole list of articles, basically everything that I've released since the summer. So some people have been enjoying doing those, and it's a great opportunity to get feedback about pronunciation, grammar, things like that. I also have some students that like to do even more. So they want feedback on writing, for example, or really work on fixing their fossilized errors, their pronunciation, and things like that. So you could also upgrade to a lesson. So those are also 25% off as well. So yeah, so all of that is available until January 20th. So if you want to book a pack of lessons and talk about all the things, that would be really great as well. So that is possible right now. All right. Lastly, if you found that this was interesting, if you found that this was helpful, feel free to give it a like, give it a thumbs up. You can always share this video to your favorite English learning group as well, and just spread the word as well. I would love to be able to get more people out to these kinds of lives. Also too, I would love to get more people just involved in general, because if I have more people, I would really like to do some group activities. So either group classes. I used to do group article readings. They were a lot of fun. So some group classes, and also some group speaking practice on Discord. So I just need to make sure that people are going to come out. So if you think that that is something you'd like to do, spread the word, help me find more people, and that would be really fantastic. All right. All right, so that's it then. That's it for today. The next time I will be back live is going to be on Wednesday. Wednesday the 15th. I'm going to be back for another coffee and crossword stream. So that's going to be Wednesday at 1300 UTC. So I look forward to seeing you there for that. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope you found this super useful. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to leave it in the comments. Or you can also find my contact information on my website or find me through Telegram. All right. Thanks, everybody. And I hope to get speaking English with you super soon. All right. Bye, everybody.